The snow came down like shards of glass, slicing through the darkness of the forest. Lyra's boots slipped over the ice-slick roots, her side burning where blood seeped through her coat. Each breath tore her lungs, white mist spilling into the wind as if the storm itself was mocking her. She ran harder, though the forest seemed to stretch endlessly, gnarled branches clawing at her face and snagging her hair. The wind wasn't just wind, it shrieked, accusing her, judging her, whispering all the things she had tried to forget. And the snow. It bit into her skin, stung her eyes, turned every step into a fight. Beneath her ribs, silver flame pulsed, a light she could barely control. It flickered like a heartbeat, illuminating the frozen trunks, the ancient ruins half buried in white, and shadows dancing across stone as if the forest itself was alive. Lyra pressed her palm over the flicker, her fingers trembling. She couldn't let them see it. Not here, not now. Don't shift, not here, not now. Or they'll know I'm more than human, she thought, panic tightening her chest. The sounds behind her made her stomach twist. Branches snapped, heavy paw steps thudded over snow, low growls curling into howls, and a scent, sharp, metallic, wolf-heavy, cut through the storm. The forest had never smelled so threatening, so alive with danger. Lyra skidded around a tree, barely keeping her balance, her mind screaming for a path, for an escape that didn't exist. Then she stumbled into a clearing. The ruins loomed, jagged and hollow beneath the swollen moon, frost sparkling on every broken surface. There was nowhere to run, no cover. Only the storm and the approaching howls. Her legs burned, her lungs ached, and her heart thudded like it wanted to break free from her chest. A final glance behind told her she was nearly surrounded. The silver flame within her flared once more, brighter this time, illuminating the forest in ghostly light. She swallowed hard, trying to force her fear into control. If you love stories where power is feared before it's understood, welcome to Wide Moon Narratives. Subscribe and run with us beneath the moon. Lyra's next step could be her last. The forest fell silent in a heartbeat. Not a branch cracked, not a whisper of wind disturbed the snow. Lyra's heart slammed against her ribs as she stumbled forward, the howls behind her fading into a tense stillness. And then he appeared, a shadow first, coalescing from the storm itself, and stepping through the whipping snow as if the blizzard had parted for him alone. Wolves froze mid-step, their snarls strangled in their throats. The world seemed to hold its breath. He was impossibly tall, broad-shouldered, each movement deliberate, controlled, like the air around him obeyed. Golden eyes burned through the storm, molten and unyielding, and in that gaze, Lyra felt her own pulse falter. There was a weight to him, a raw, almost dangerous power pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. Then he spoke. Her name, not shouted, not questioned. Spoken like a verdict, like a claim. Her blood iced in her veins. How could he know? She had never spoken it aloud. He had been watching her, studying her, and yet he did not step forward to save her immediately. His eyes scanned her as if weighing every heartbeat, every tremble of muscle, every flicker of silver flame beneath her skin. Judgment hung between them, heavy as snow on the trees. And then, action, brutal, efficient, terrifying. In one sweep, he sent the pursuing wolves scattering, snow and ice exploding with every strike of his hand, the storm itself seeming to obey his will. Lyra stumbled back, chest heaving, and met his eyes. Fear tangled with fury, and beneath it, something unnameable, something that drew her in despite the danger. Her body tensed, every instinct screaming run, but part of her ached, wanting to stay. He stepped closer, the snow crunching beneath him, power radiating, compelling. His voice is low, almost gentle now, yet carrying the weight of command. Come with me, or die alone in this storm. Lyra froze. Every instinct screamed flight. Every heartbeat whispered curiosity. And in that instant, she realized this alpha was no savior in the way she expected. He was a reckoning, a challenge, and perhaps, the only one who could see her for what she truly was. The storm's fury softened behind them, but Lyra's chest still heaved, lungs tight with the remnants of fear. She kept her gaze low, boots crunching in the frost, yet every shadow, every flicker of movement reminded her of the past she could never outrun. Exile. That word had haunted her for as long as she could remember, echoing like a drumbeat in her mind. She had been a child when it began, a small, trembling, silver flame leaking from her palms without permission, igniting her sacred den. The fire had devoured everything, sacred relics, holy runes, the memories of her pack etched in stone. Elders had called her cursed, and fingers pointed, faces twisted in horror. Too dangerous, they whispered. She cannot be allowed to live among us. And so they branded her as a threat, a shadow meant to be hidden, hunted, erased. Every glance from strangers carried suspicion. Every kind gesture had strings. Trust had become a luxury she could not afford. She had learned to survive alone, to swallow her power, to keep her silver flame hidden, lest it burn both her and anyone foolish enough to stand near. Yet here he was, the Alpha King. Watching, yes, but not with accusation, not with the cold, condemning eyes of the pack. He observed, steady and unyielding, yet somehow patient, listening. She could feel it, a tension in the air around him, as though he recognized her scars without needing her to explain. And it unnerved her. The pull of his gaze was different from the world's. It was magnetic, unsettling, almost intimate, like he could see the parts of her she had spent her life burying. Her mind twisted, tangled in the ache of memory and the weight of instinct. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself even a fragment of hope when betrayal had been her constant companion? Every instinct screamed caution, but something in his presence, something in the way he held himself, deliberate and unflinching, made her heart falter. The storm outside was fading, but the tempest inside her chest had only begun to rage. The forest thinned, revealing jagged cliffs etched in frost, their surfaces glinting under the silvered moonlight. Lyra's boots crunched over frozen moss, her pulse hammering with a mixture of fear and awe. The air smelled of stone and ice, heavy with a whisper of magic that made her skin prickle. She had been running all her life, from judgment, exile, and herself, but now the world seemed to pause, as if holding its breath for her arrival. Ahead, ancient ruins rose from the snow, their stones etched with symbols older than memory. She stepped closer, and a shiver ran through her. A silver flame flickered beneath her skin, responding to the presence of the shrine. The carvings glowed faintly, pulsating like the heartbeat of something alive. Her fingers brushed the frost-covered stone, and visions hit her like waves breaking against cliffs. A wolf crowned in silver and gold stood tall, its eyes blazing with fire that mirrored the flame beneath her own skin. A king knelt, blood on stone, and a crown lay shattered at his feet. Whispers crawled into her mind, on soft yet insistent. Child of the silver flame, heir of the true Alpha. She froze, the words reverberating through her chest, threatening to tear apart the fragile sense of self she had built in exile. Her heart raced, a mixture of disbelief, fear, and reluctant awe. She wanted to turn away, to vanish into the shadows she knew so well, but something deep inside her, a voice she had buried beneath pain and mistrust, urged her forward. The Alpha King's presence behind her was rigid, tense, the air around him crackling with restrained power. He had heard the same whispers, yet he denied them, shaking his head, muscles tight with unease. "This cannot be," he muttered, his voice low and commanding, almost breaking under the weight of authority and fear. To him, her destiny threatened the world he had fought to protect. To her, it was a mantle she never asked to bear. Doubt gnawed at her, sharp and relentless. She didn't want prophecy. She didn't want power. Survival alone had been her goal for years, yet now the ruins seemed to hum with possibility and peril. Every instinct screamed retreat, but every pulse of silver flame reminded her that she was already part of something far greater than she had ever imagined. The wind whipped against her face, carrying the scent of ice and fire, and for the first time in years, she felt the weight of destiny pressing against her chest. The familiar scent of her old pack hit Lyra before she even saw the gathering. Smoke from torches mingled with the crisp air, carrying the acrid tang of fear and suspicion. Wolves prowled the edges of the clearing, ears pricked, teeth bared, eyes flicking between her and the Alpha King at her side. Whispers slithered through the crowd like serpents, twisting her name into curses she had once prayed to forget. Forbidden, dangerous, cursed. Every syllable stabbed her chest, echoing memories of exile, of nights spent hiding in shadows, of the Elder's scorn. A ripple of tension pulsed through the gathering. Lyra's gaze met the Alpha King's, and she saw the rigid line of his jaw, the storm in his golden eyes. He had brought her back here, into the lion's den of judgment, and she realized how heavy the choice had been, for both of them. But before he could speak, a rival Alpha stepped forward, radiating arrogance and raw hostility. His voice cut through the murmurs, sharp and accusing. "She is forbidden. She will destroy everything our pack has built, and you, your king, would side with her over your own people." Chaos erupted like a wildfire. Pack members surged forward, teeth and claws glinting under torchlight. Shouts and snarls collided. The ritual that had been meant to honor the ancestors fractured into screams and accusations. Lyra's side ached from the old wound, but adrenaline surged through her, silver flame flickering beneath her skin as instinct screamed to fight. She turned, seeing the Alpha King torn between his duty and his heart, and for the first time, she understood the full weight of the world pressing against him and against her. He stepped closer, voice low, almost a plea. "Leave, Lyra. I cannot protect you here." Her heart splintered at the words. Every instinct screamed to stay, to fight by his side, but she recognized the truth. Remaining would risk him, or risk everything he had sworn to protect. With a shiver of pain, she stepped back, letting herself be swallowed by shadows, letting the wind carry her away from the chaos she had once called home. And yet, even as she fled, her pulse burned with a vow, a promise that one day she would return stronger, unbroken, and unstoppable. Continue with the sequence of the narration above, starting from where you end the above, factoring every detail of a great werewolf shifter romance audiobook niche narration. The tone should be intense, emotional, and immersive. No fluff, no repetition, no generic filler. Focus on character emotion, physical tension, atmosphere, and internal conflict. Avoid cliches and keep the pacing tight. Every paragraph must push the scene forward or deepen character connection. And make it very long to be at least 300 word count without repetition, and should retain its engagement, remove every unnecessary element as I only want the narrator. The cave door had barely closed behind them when the world cracked open. A messenger arrived, breathless, eyes wide with terror. The words spilled out like poison. The council, they know who she is, and they call her the true heir. Lyra's stomach dropped, and every muscle tensed. Her heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest and thrown into the storm outside. The firelight danced across the Alpha King's face, but for the first time, it was not warmth she saw. It was fear and hesitation. What does this mean?" Lyra demanded, her voice tight, brittle with anger. She should have known, she should have seen it coming, but nothing could prepare her for the depth of betrayal that followed. The Alpha King's gaze flickered away, just for a heartbeat, and in that single broken instant, everything she had ever hoped for shattered. The words came next, low, restrained, but carrying the weight of a confession too monstrous to bear. I ordered her death. Your mother. I thought it would protect you, protect us, protect the pack." Lyra froze. Her legs trembled, the firelight catching on the silver flame beneath her skin, igniting it against her ribs, her arms, her chest. She could feel it rising, hot, furious, uncontrollable. Every betrayal, every accusation, every stolen memory of childhood pain boiled up, and it surged through her like wildfire. No, no, no. The words tore themselves from her throat, a scream swallowed by the howl of wind battering the cave mouth. Outside, the storm welcomed her, Snow whipped her hair into her face. Ice cut through her boots. But she didn't care. She ran, faster than the world could hold her, faster than the betrayal that burned her veins. Behind her, the Alpha King reached for her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Her silver flame flared, illuminating the night, the ruins, the trees, every shadow bearing witness to her devastation. And in that blaze, in that uncontainable burning fury, she realized she would never be a pawn. She would never be controlled again. The prophecy had lied, or at least the truth had been hidden, but she would reclaim it on her own terms. Every step through the storm, every slash of wind against her face, every distant howl carried the promise of transformation, and of power unbound, and of a vengeance that would not wait. The storm had not softened, it had only sharpened, slicing through the night like a blade as Lyra re-emerged from the shadowed forest. Every muscle burned, every heartbeat thundered in her chest like a war drum. She could hear it, the distant cries of her pack, the clash of steel, the chanting of those who thought her fear could be commanded. But fear had fled from her long ago, replaced by something hotter, something brighter. Power. Her power. The silver flame beneath her skin roared to life, spilling out in pulses that illuminated the battlefield in fleeting, eerie bursts. Snow and ice shimmered with the reflection of her fury, the trees trembling as if the land itself recognized her authority. Enemies froze mid-step as her presence ignited the air. Shadows curled back at the edges of her vision. Wolves paused, sensing the shift in balance, some snarling in awe, some in terror. Her ancestors' voices thundered through her mind, whispering secrets in a language older than blood, older than the mountains around her. She spoke aloud, almost without thinking, words of command, words of reclamation, and the ground beneath her feet responded. Rocks cracked, roots heaved, light burst from the ruins of an ancient altar, like a dawn no mortal had seen before. The Alpha King appeared at the edge of the chaos, molten eyes wide, watching her ascend. She didn't need him now. She needed no one. Yet the spark of connection remained, fragile but undeniable, a tether in the storm. He would witness her, not as a girl hunted, not as a pawn, not as a victim, but as destiny incarnate. The ritual, the enemies, and the council who had branded her dangerous, even the rival Alpha who sought to end her, all faltered under the force of her will. Lyra raised her hands, silver flame spiraling outward in brilliant arcs, and declared to the night, to the storm, to every creature that had doubted her, "I am not your sacrifice. I am your reckoning." The land itself seemed to answer, the ruins alive with ancient echoes, a chorus of ancestors singing her power. And in that fire-forged moment, Lyra realized she had become the force that would shape this world. No longer hunted, no longer exiled. She was the air, the Alpha, the storm. The battlefield was silent now, but it was not peace. The snow lay thick over shattered stone and scorched earth, silver flame still licking at the edges of her fingertips, vanishing only when she willed it. Lyra stood at the center, end chest heaving, hair plastered with ice and blood, the wind carrying the smell of smoke and wolf fur. Every muscle ached, every heartbeat was an echo of the storm she had become. Her eyes swept the chaos, the fallen, the enemies who had thought they could command her fear, and she felt something she had not known before, the terrifying clarity of her own power. And yet, in the midst of triumph, there was emptiness. The Alpha King stood some distance away, silent, molten gold eyes fixed on her. He had watched, had waited, had known the truth of her strength, and yet still, he had not reached for her in the storm. Could she trust him? Could anyone? Her chest tightened at the thought. She had claimed the night, reshaped the land, spoken with the voices of her ancestors, and still she was alone. Lyra turned away from the ruins, and from the eyes of the world, from him. Her boots sank into snow as her silver flame faded into the night, leaving only the ghost of what had burned so brightly. She felt every pulse of grief, every sting of betrayal, every whisper of longing, and she realized that power without choice is still a cage. And in that silence, in that frozen, trembling moment, The question hung heavier than any sword, sharper than any fang. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? Would you stand with the one who was hunted and hated, and yet rose beyond them all? Or would you turn away, afraid of fire you could never control? The wind carried her words like a whisper only the moon could hear, and beneath that pale light, a voice seemed to rise with the shadows beckoning. If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Wide Moon Narratives. Here, we tell tales that burn, the snow whispered. The ruins held their breath. And Lyra. She walked forward, alone but unbroken, leaving the world to answer the question it had never dared ask. The snow had settled, but the storm was far from over. The ruins were silent now, but the earth beneath Lyra's boots shivered, subtle tremors rolling through frozen stone, through roots and ice, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Shadows stretched long across the broken terrain, crawling, twisting, moving of their own accord. The wind whispered her name, not in warning, not in fear, but in recognition, a language older than memory, older than pack or prophecy. She stopped. Every nerve screamed, every instinct urged caution, but her chest was fire and ice all at once. The silver flame that had once been a secret now hummed beneath her skin, and not fully tamed, not fully unleashed. The whispers of the ruins seemed to respond, curling into her ears, feeding her awareness. The voice was low, a sound both familiar and impossibly ancient. She is not the only one. The true alpha hasn't risen yet. Lyra's heart thudded, a jagged rhythm of fear, wonder, and something darker she didn't yet name. Who else? What power slumbered in the shadows, hidden until now? The world she thought she had claimed felt suddenly fragile. A stage for forces she could not yet see, enemies she could not yet know. And yet, there was a pulse, a promise, a challenge. The ruins seemed alive, reacting to her very presence, echoing the warning and the invitation. Rise or fall, but the story does not end here. She took a step forward, and the tremor beneath her grew, as though the earth itself agreed. The snow swirled faster, lightning flickered in distant clouds, and the horizon seemed to stretch, waiting. In that frozen silence, every shadow became a question, every gust a portent. Lyra's breath steamed in the cold night air, and her pulse, fast, fierce, was the only drumbeat marking the moment before everything shifted again. The screen of night closed around her. The world exhaled, and for anyone listening, for anyone daring enough to follow, one thought lingered, heavy and certain. This isn't over, not by far. The storm has passed, but the air still hums with the echoes of power. Lyra stands at the edge of the ancient ruins, silver flame pulsing faintly beneath her skin, her chest heaving with the weight of what she's become. The battlefield lies quiet now, scorched and trembling, the whispers of ancestors fading into the night. She is no longer the girl running terrified through the snow. She is the air, the flame, the force, the world both fears and needs. The Alpha King watches her from the shadows, eyes molten gold, unreadable. He had doubted, hesitated, even betrayed in his fear, but in this moment he sees her fully, not just as a warrior, not just as the prophecy, but as the woman he cannot ignore. Their gazes meet, electric, tense, and charged with all the unsaid words, the trust yet to be earned, the connection neither can deny. Lyra turns away from him, from the battlefield, from the remnants of her old life. She doesn't need anyone to define her power. She doesn't need anyone's permission to exist. Yet, in the silent pulse between them, there's the faintest acknowledgement that destiny isn't just hers alone. It's theirs, intertwined, fragile, and dangerous, and as the moonlight glints off the ice, shadows stretch across the land, whispering of others who wait, watching, challenging. The story is far from over. Lyra's journey, her heart, and her power are just beginning. She has claimed herself, and the world will have to reckon with what that means.